It's weird how the tiniest things can expose secrets that have been kept in the dark for so long. I keep wondering what my life would be like now if I hadn't discovered my wife's secret by complete coincidence. I'd probably be happier not knowing. My wife, 36 female, and I, 36 male, have been together for almost a decade, and we've always had a genuinely solid marriage. We've always been great partners, both at being parents and at running our small business together. She was the one who ran the front end of our business. She was friendly enough with everyone in the neighborhood, so customers loved her. The business even had her name in the title. I worked more behind the scenes, handling planning and providing the bulk of the finances and decision-making. We had defined roles when it came to parenting, too. She was firm on our boys, 2 male, 5 male, when needed, and I usually got to be the fun parent, the one who could roughhouse with them. But we always presented a unified front and never undermined the others when it came down to it. The older one is already playing soccer, and he's pretty dang good at it. I'm super proud of the little guy, and I always try to encourage his talent. I had a horrible father, so I always do my best to be a good dad to my kids. Giving him room to develop his passion was just one of the ways I have tried to break the cycle, you know? Our lives were more or less perfect. We didn't have everything we needed, but I honestly couldn't complain. And then everything fell apart because of a blood donation. How silly is that? Like I said, I'm the meticulous type. I handle the details for our business. I also take care of all the papers and documents for the family, so I'm well aware of the kids' blood types. I didn't know mine though, because I'd never had a reason to find out. I've never had any surgeries done, and I've never needed blood. One day, my wife and I decided to participate in a community blood drive. As the face of our business, she thought it would generate some goodwill if we were seen out donating blood. I agreed with her, so we both went down to make our donation. We were asked if we wanted donor cards. My wife declined. However, I thought it would be handy for me to have a donor card on me, especially since I was unaware of my blood type. The start of the weirdness was when the donor card came in a few weeks later. Right there on the donor card, my blood type was listed as O. This couldn't be right. My blood type is different from my son's. My first son has type AB blood, but the second has type B. I already knew my wife's blood type. Her blood type is AB, just like my son's. So that checked out, right? But a corner of my mind was telling me I was wrong. I tried to think back to high school biology. If a child gets a gene from each parent, then a parent with O blood couldn't possibly have a child with AB blood. For a while, disbelief sank in. I'm not the smartest guy when it comes to science, so it was possible that I had things mixed up. I checked online to clear things up. Type AB blood meant my son and wife had both the A and B antigens in their blood. Type O blood means I have neither. Each parent passes on a single set to their kid, so my son should have gotten either A or B from his mom, and nothing from me. And yet, here he was with a full set. According to our blood types, the younger might be mine, but my older son definitely wasn't. You won't imagine how many sources I checked to make sure I wasn't mistaken, but everything still came to the same conclusion. My heart sank. Here was this wonderful little kid I've been raising for the past 5 years, nurturing his hopes and dreams, and it turns out I'm not his father? This had to be a mistake. Maybe I was misremembering his mother's blood type. Maybe there'd be a mistake with mine, or with my son's. I refused to accept it, and I remember dreaming up 100 different reasons why this couldn't be real. When the denial wore off, I started trying to come up with my next steps. If one of the blood types was really wrong, then the best way to confirm the whole situation would be a paternity test. That would prove the truth beyond the shadow of a doubt, and I could decide what needed to be done from there. At that point, I was really hoping that the paternity test would prove that there was just a mistake somewhere. Regarding the blood types, maybe I wasn't O. Sure, I could just do another blood test, but a paternity test would probably address my fear. The real issue was figuring out how to get him to take a paternity test without his mom finding out. I didn't need her consent to have the test done, but it would be tough getting him to a hospital without her finding out. And I didn't want her to find out at this point, because I was accusing her of something extremely serious. I had to be completely sure before I confronted her. We had been married for way too long for me to accuse her of not only cheating, but trying to pass someone else's child as mine. Fortunately, there was a simpler solution. I didn't know that there were home paternity tests that were cheaper than a lab test. They were supposedly 100% accurate too. All I needed to do was swab my and my son's cheeks and mail the samples into a lab, and they'd send me the results. The only catch was that the results from a home paternity test couldn't be used in court, but that didn't matter to me right now. I wasn't thinking about divorce, just finding out the truth. Hopefully this was all just some dumb mix-up, and I'd be able to forget this ever happened. I picked up the tests from the local pharmacy on my way home from work one day. I was browsing the shelves, looking for the paternity tests, when I was hit with the realization that I would need two. If the truly oldest wasn't mine, then the chances are the youngest wouldn't be either. I got both tests and snuck them home in my laptop bag. When I got home that day, everything was business as usual. My wife had brought the kids home from school. She kissed me on the cheek as she came in, and I had a hard time bringing myself to return it. On one hand, I felt guilty, like I was betraying her trust. On the other, I felt betrayed myself. There was a real possibility that my kids weren't mine, and that the life I'd spent years building was all a lie. I tried to keep things natural and kissed my wife on the forehead before we returned to the kitchen to finish dinner. We talked casually while I thought about the paternity tests in my bag. As soon as I could slip away, I went upstairs and hid them under the bathroom sink. Later that evening at dinner, I still couldn't shake the feeling that my happy family was hanging on by a thread. My wife was her usual self, smiling and laughing with me and the boys, trying to get the younger one to eat his vegetables. This was probably the first time in my life that I prayed desperately to be wrong about something, because I had no idea what I would do if I wasn't. Would I have to leave these children's lives? The paternity test stayed under the sink until the weekend when my wife went out to run some errands. I stayed home with the kids. We were playing together when she left, and as soon as I heard her drive off, I ran upstairs to get the tests. I didn't want the kids to tell their mom about the tests when she got home, so I made it part of a game. I told them we were doing a science experiment. They were both curious, but they were eager to play along. I swabbed both of their cheeks, pretending to be a scientist, and packaged the samples. I got them to help swab me, too, just to keep the game going. Once the samples were mailed, all that was left to do was wait. It took a little over a week for me to hear back, but eventually, the results were emailed to me. My hands were shaking when I opened the first one. Not mine. The second one was the same. I'd been trying to prepare myself for the news ever since I'd done the test, but it still couldn't dull the pain. I don't know exactly how to describe what I felt at that time. It was something like a profound sense of loss, like I would never have my old life back. I hope none of you guys will ever have to experience the kind of pain I felt after reading those results. It's been a few days now and I still don't feel all right. I haven't confronted my wife yet, but she knows something is wrong. I barely eat, I can't bring myself to talk to her like normal, and even playing with the kids feels off to me. I mean, there's some other man's children. I don't even know who it could possibly be. Was it the same man? These children were born 3 years apart. She must have been having a full-blown affair or serial cheating. All the questions don't help with the pain. I just need some help figuring out where to go from here. Eventually, I'll have to face the reality of my situation. But for now, I can't even comprehend where to start from. You go out to donate a little blood and end up finding out you've been donating your DNA to raise someone else's kids. Honestly, the universe has a sick sense of humor. It's completely understandable that you're feeling lost right now, OP. You've built a life around your family business and being the best dad you can be, only to have this bomb dropped on you out of nowhere. Update 1. Wow, I didn't expect the outpour of support I received from this community. First, I want to thank everybody who was concerned about my mental health. I don't think I was in danger of harming myself or others, but I was starting to slip into a dark place. I've started therapy, and it's helping me break out of the harmful thought patterns that were starting to form. Second, thanks to everyone who gave me advice on how to approach this. You were right that I couldn't sit around resenting her forever, so I confronted her. I told her we both needed to talk, and I sat her down at the dinner table. Then I slid my phone across the table to her, with the results of the paternity test open. "What is this?" she chuckled nervously. I was trying to be the bigger man here, but she was trying my patience already. I ignored her laugh. "It's the results of a paternity test. I know the boys aren't mine." She slid the phone back across the table to me, laughing that paternity tests can be wrong. "False positives happen." I hadn't doubted the results for a second. Along with the blood type differences, it was beyond doubt that they weren't my kids. But her reaction eliminated any last chances of doubt I might have had. The woman I knew wouldn't laugh off accusations of this severity. If I was really the father of these kids, she would have torn me a new one and had me sleeping on the couch for a week. But no, she was laughing about it. I sighed and passed the phone back. There are 2 tests in there. 1 false positive is unlikely. 2 false positives is almost impossible. Then I told her about how I became suspicious in the first place, telling her how it was impossible for us to have a type AB child. She was quiet throughout, and even after I finished speaking, she was still there in silence. It took her a full 5 minutes before she talked, and when she spoke, her voice was almost inaudible. "I'm sorry. It was a mistake and I've regretted it every day." The admission hurt like hell. I'd been holding out hope for one final wild explanation, but here it was. I just hate that I had to be proven right at a moment where I could have wanted anything but that. Just a few words and I'd gone from a father of 2 children to a childless man. It took everything in me to keep tears from falling right then. She had no problem crying though. Her voice broke as she explained that it was back when I had been working long nights. Her excuse was that I was always stressed and tired when I got home and that she became lonely. Then she started calling a guy from work when I wasn't around, and eventually they started seeing each other. I asked how many times they'd slept together. She put her head in her hands and told me that it had been going on for about 3 years, and stopped after she'd gotten pregnant the second time. "Who is he?" "It doesn't matter who he is. You're their real father. That's why I never told you, because you've been their real father their whole lives." Looking back, that line is very amusing, but not in a comedic way. I let her know that it wasn't her right to decide that. That was an impossible, painful decision that I had come to terms with on my own. I emphasized that it was her fault that I was in the position. Then I told her that I only wanted to know who their biological father was in case it came up during the divorce. She paused like I'd slapped her. She simply repeated, "Divorce?" with tears in her eyes. That annoyed me. I asked if she really thought I wanted to be with a woman who knowingly passed another man's children off onto me. A woman who had an affair for 3 years with a guy from work. She just gawked stupidly at me and said, "But you love them." I took a deep breath and told her that what she did wasn't excused by the fact that I loved them. She'd stolen the chance to build a family of my own from me, and I could never forgive her for that. The tears kept coming, but I was numb to them. I hadn't hurt her. I'd even tried to make things easy for her. I confronted her until I had all the facts. I hadn't accused her blindly, and I tried to confront her civilly. If anyone should be in tears here, it was me. As she cried, she kept talking about the kids. She repeated that I was the boys' real father and that I couldn't leave them. I stood up and told her that I needed time to think about how I was going to handle this. Over the next few days, I researched the divorce process and got in contact with a lawyer. I knew that this divorce was going to be messy, especially with the kids being involved, but I couldn't back out of it. I was determined to do what was best for my peace of mind while also doing right by the boys, even if they weren't biologically mine. They didn't deserve to suffer for their mother's betrayal. I eventually decided that I wanted to remain part of the boys' lives. It wasn't an easy decision to come to. I agonized over it during many sleepless nights. Despite everything, I had been their father in every way that mattered for years. They looked up to me, come to me for love and support, and trusted me fully. They had no idea about the dilemma I was facing, or how their mother had selfishly put all of us into this miserable situation. I couldn't turn back on them because of their mother's faults. And I know that a lot of you won't agree with that decision, but honestly, I thought about it in its entirety and I simply can't leave those children. I had been committed to keeping the divorce amicable. I wanted to remain in my children's life and maintain a decent relationship with their mother. However, my stance on that changed after how she acted when she was served the divorce papers. She came up to me and told me that I was tearing our family apart. She looked at me with a stern expression, like I was the one being stupid here. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I had every right to walk away from her and the children completely. I'd been attempting to maintain some normalcy, stay in the house so we could break the news to the kids gently. I did my best to love the boys like I always had, so they wouldn't think anything was wrong. But somehow I was the one tearing the family apart? I couldn't stand that. At that moment I realized I had gone too easy on her. I had wanted to make this easy for her and the kids. She took that as a sign of weakness. Even when she had confirmed her cheating, I tried not to hate her. It was difficult because I'd been betrayed and lied to, but I still tried. She didn't deserve that kindness anymore. I told her that we weren't one family anymore. We were 2 families that were raising the same children. I let her know that I was going to make the divorce a living hell for her. I was going to fight her for custody. I was going to fight against alimony. Then I told her I was going to take the business from her. It was the one thing she loved more than anything else. It was her dream to pass it down to the kids one day, and I decided I would rob her of that dream the same way she had robbed me. Her tears did not affect me. I'd tried to do this the easy way, and she'd attempt to guilt me. Now I was going to fight for my rights, and I'd flatten her in the process. If she wanted to play the victim, then I'd give her something to cry about. She wasn't going to walk out of this unscathed. At that point, I had been the good guy long enough, and it hadn't paid off. We'd built the business together, but there was always an unspoken understanding that it was hers. But legally, my name was on a lot of the documents just like hers. I'd put most of the funding into it as well. My lawyer said it would be difficult for me to claim the business entirely, but I had a very good claim for at least 50% of it. 50% was good enough though. I wanted to take the business away from her or destroy it completely. Either way, I didn't want her to have it by the time we were done. The divorce proceedings were brutal. She and her lawyer went with the strategy of turning me into a villain. Fortunately for me, it seems she didn't have enough to get a good lawyer, because the guy she hired was a real moron. His first brilliant idea was to play up the idea that I was abandoning my kids. That fell apart because I was actively fighting for custody, even though they weren't biologically mine. My lawyer was vicious though. I told him that I wanted to tear her apart during the divorce, and this guy was a shark. I couldn't follow all the legalese, but the results spoke for themselves. I ended up with 55% of the business, a controlling share. A controlling share in the business was a good start, but it didn't make me happy. It didn't really change much, since I had always been in charge of the business anyway. I could fire her if I wanted and keep the business running, but she'd still make income off my hard work. I had to get rid of it entirely. Taking the business away from her was satisfying, but I had to face the fact that I was dismantling my kids' future. It was hard, but I decided I would go through with selling the business. I would use the money to build another business for them. I can't grant their mother the satisfaction of achieving her dream after what she did to me. First of all, props to you for getting into therapy and not letting the situation push you entirely into a dark spiral. That's a major win in itself, OP. That, "I'm sorry it was a mistake" line. And then the 3 years? It's definitely not a mistake. Getting control of the business and then deciding to sell it is perfect. Well done. You took something she valued, something she planned to pass on, and you're using it to start fresh. Not just for you, but for the kids. I respect the hell out of you, OP, for not turning your back on the kids. You might not be their bio dad, but you've been the real father through and through, and they're lucky to have you in their corner. Update 2. It's been almost a year since the divorce was finalized, and things have been getting better for me. Therapy has been helping me come to terms with my new life. I'm thankful to still have my children in my life. As for the business, that's gone. I liquidated it the first chance I got. She and I each got a decent sum of money for it. I immediately invested my share into starting a new business, which is well on its way to being successful. I plan on leaving the business to my boys when the time comes. It gives me peace to know that I'll be the one providing a secure future for them and not her. I've taken up a no contact policy with my ex-wife. We only communicate when it has something to do with the kids. That hasn't stopped her from trying to convince me to take her back though. Between the loss of her business and the new financial strain from the divorce, she hasn't been doing too well. Sometimes she calls me out of the blue, pretending she called about the kids. Then she'll ask personal questions, like whether I've started dating again. I always tell her just enough to give her the impression that I'm doing great. Eventually, she switched tactics from dropping hints to outright begging us to get back together. The last time, she had invited herself in when dropping the kids off. She'd taken my hand and tried to lure me into the bedroom so we could speak in private. I made my disgust visible and told her quietly that she was embarrassing herself. I tried to gently nudge her out the door, but she refused to move and begged for another chance. She said that we worked great together, both as parents and as a business team. Then she offered to give me biological children of my own. I was stunned. Was offering me more kids, kids that would actually be mine since she was a cheating slut before, supposed to fix everything? They're not a bargaining chip she could dangle to make up for her mistakes. I told her that, and let her know just how disgusted I was with her at the moment. I told her I wanted to raise the boys that I had come to love, not replace them. Her actions had already stolen the chance for me to build a family in an honest, loving way, and there was nothing she could ever do to fix that. And if one day I decided to have biological children in the future, it would not be with her. I looked over to make sure the kids weren't in earshot, and I told her never to set foot in the house again unless I invited her in. And again, she started with the tears. Funny how the tears come when they don't get their way, huh? I think she got the message though, because she hasn't tried another stunt like that. Whenever she comes around, she looks at the floor and can't meet my eyes, and she rarely says more than she needs to. I'm sure she'll try again someday, but she'll just be wasting her breath. I've moved on from her completely, and my life is already so much better for it.